Hi, I'm Rob Carolina. This is one part of a multi-part introduction to the Law and Regulation Knowledge Area of CyBOK. The Law and Regulation Knowledge Area is one of 19 knowledge areas in the entire project. The webinar that introduces this knowledge area is pretty long, and so I decided to break it up into 15 constituent parts. You are now about to listen to one of those parts. If you haven't already done so, I would recommend that you go back and listen to the introduction. It's also labeled Part 0. That'll help you understand what's about to happen. Alternatively, you can listen to the entire webinar as a single file. So without further ado, let's listen to this part. Now I want to take a moment to talk about other regulatory matters. The title of this section really doesn't do the subject justice. Basically, I was trying to find a way to draw together a number of different disparate regulations that are specifically focused around some type of subject matter. Some of these are so significant that a cybersecurity practitioner might spend 10 years of their career working on an issue that revolves around just one of these. So for example, if we look at industry-specific regulation, financial services regulation, regulation of professions, regulating public utilities, all of these are regulatory regimes that predate our understanding of cybersecurity. All of these have been adopted for important public purposes. As time has gone on, each of these industry regulators have begun to understand that cybersecurity is one of the more significant things that can influence the stability of their regulated firms. As a result, many of them have gone to differing lengths to try to direct their industry on how to deal with cybersecurity. Some of them have been a bit hesitant to jump in. Some of them have gone further faster. I suspect that financial services regulators were in a little sooner than others. Within Europe, this prompted the adoption of the Nis Directive, which the quickest way to think about that is that it is a directive trying to increase regulatory scrutiny all across the European Union with respect to critical national infrastructure. As we turn our attention to consumer products, we find different types of regulation. The European Union's recent Cybersecurity Act has created a framework to try to regulate the security of products in this space, and there are also traditional regulators like the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, which has a long history of trying to regulate the safety of consumer products as well as consumer marketing. On the technical standards side, you find a growing number of standards, and I've cited ETSI TS103645 as an early example of trying to get to grips with what do we want the cybersecurity of consumer products to look like. Now moving to a completely different regime, the problem of dual-use products, products and services that can be used for a military or a non-military purpose, and historically, the one that comes straight to the front, cryptography. Many of us are old enough to remember when cryptography was very, very heavily restricted, very heavily regulated. There still are actually, export restrictions and import restrictions, restrictions on use. Many of those regulations with respect to cryptography specifically have been significantly reduced as regulators began to appreciate that some type of cryptographic solutions were going to be necessary to create a successful internet. In the US, this breakthrough was facilitated significantly by free speech litigation, which you can read a little bit about. Really the case, I think, that is most significant in that is a case called Junger v. Daly, decided in the Sixth Circuit U.S. Court in the year 2000. Finally, if we look to a completely different regulatory field, state secrets. I've written almost nothing about this, in part because the rules are very different from place to place. But if you work for a state security agency, or you are in receipt of information from a state security agency, you will need to pay extremely close attention to the rules that govern state secrets. I don't need to tell you, it's a very serious thing that must be complied with. Now I'd like to take a quick look at